Now, if you have never made a herringbone wrap or a simple eye pen or wire wrap loop, check out my playlist and my Jewelry 101 series, and you will see both of these in multiple videos. Super, super easy. But you can do whatever you want, okay? You can do whatever you want on the bottom. Okay, so the one thing I'm going to do, guys, to get started before we begin to figure out my pattern, which I'm kind of going to design on the fly with you today, is I am going to open up my eye pen here. So let me pull you down. And I'll pull you up and down throughout so you can really see in case you're new. In case you're a beginner and you really love this technique and you've never seen it. So I'm just going to open up my loop I made on the bottom. And I am going to connect it to my herringbone wrapped crystal. And then I'm going to go ahead and let's close that loop up. And I'm going to make sure that that loop is perfectly closed. Let me get my thinner pliers out here for that. Just at the right angle. Okay, I think that's better. Okay. Now, here, guys, is where you're going to want to make sure if you're doing some sort of a dangle, the direction of your loops. Okay? So this is the front of my herringbone, right? So I would want my loop on the top here to be facing, do you notice how it's facing the opposite direction? So you see how the loop here on my herringbone is kind of facing me, but the loop up here is facing towards the table? That's the way you would want your loop. And if you need to turn it, we're just going to grab our pliers and turn it, because this is how we're going to string it on the wire, and then we want this to be the front. Okay, so you want your loops facing the correct direction. So I'm just going to put my chain nose over that loop. I am going to hold the bottom here, and I am going to just kind of pivot that a little bit just to straighten it out to where this loop, see, now I just put it out of whack, is the opposite direction of the front loop. So it's going to lay correctly. It's just wire. We can move it around, do whatever we need to do. Okay, so notice there now how if this is the front of my herringbone, I'll put it the correct way, then my loop is facing this way. So that'll string right on my wire and it'll hang correctly, okay? And so to start, we need to grab our wire. Let's grab our wire. I'm just gonna, because your focal or your large bead, whatever you're going to be putting at the bottom of your split needs to be established before you begin your split, right? So it's kind of your basic concept. So I cut my wire, right? So I've got my ends married up here. I'm gonna find the center of my wire and allow my focal to go down to the center of that wire. And I'm just gonna kind of pinch that a little bit, and that establishes the center of my wire. And now what I am going to do is I am going to keep my wires together. Okay, I'm gonna keep my wires together and figure out what bead I wanna put on here first. So I think what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to put the gray rondelle on. And let's see if I like that. I'm not mad at that at all. I think that's actually quite cute. So that's what we've got. Okay, so we married our ends up and we put our first bead on both wires. This is where we now begin to split some of these out here. You do need, at the beginning of your split, you will need a small bead, as small as you can. I also have the 6 millimeters here for that reason, and then we've got the 4s. The reason is, guys, is because when you're starting your split, let me pull you down to the mat and show you. If you put too large of a bead here, okay, next to that split bead, okay, this first bead that's going to establish our split that went down both strands, they will vie for attention, right? And let me show you exactly what I'm talking about right here. I've got you down. Do you see what I mean? So if these beads were vying for attention, they would not lay flat like that on that first bead. So you need small beads in order for them to lay flat next to each other right on top of your very first bead. Okay? That is the method to madness on a split. Really, other than that, this is just simple beading work. So that's why I pulled out my toe hose. So I'm gonna put on 2 of my 11 O's here on each side. I think that's gonna be fine, just 2. And there's 1, 2. I can get them on. Okay, so there's 2 on one side, and let's get 2 on the other side. Okay, so now I've got 2 11 O's, and let me then go, I think, we're gonna go with I think we're gonna go with 3 of these 4 millimeters on one side, and then I'm gonna go with the bronze on the other. We're gonna do an asymmetrical here. We'll do 3 of the bronze, 4 millimeters. I'm gonna stop, pull you down the mat, and show you just exactly. And this is how you start out any split. Okay, so you see that? Okay, do you see? Let me put this on the mat and really show you. Do you guys see? I'm gonna push these beads down. What I'm talking about, do you see how those 11 O's are laying directly next to each other on their own respective wires here? They are not, let me pull it actually this direction and show you. They are not vying for attention. Therefore, they're not like this with a big gap of wire. You want that part of that initial bottom of your split right here. You want that to be, those beads to be as flat as possible on that first bead. And so that's why we work with smaller beads at the very beginning of our split. So, because this is exactly, by the way, how it's going to start to, lay, right? It'll go up just like this on the neck. So you do want to follow that methodology on a split, and then do anything you want from there. You just need to establish that bottom. Also, the other thing that we're going to get into in a minute here, guys, and I'm just going to go ahead and start beading, is when we finish off these strands, we are going to be finishing them off independently of each other as if they are 2 different necklaces. And the reason that's going to happen is literally because we just split them, didn't we? Right? We just put both wires together, put on that gray rondelle, and then split them from there. So now they almost act as if they're 2 independent necklaces. So they will be crimped off independently, and we'll get to that just as soon as I'm done beading, and I will show you that. So I'm just trying to figure out what I'm doing. Okay, so I got that. So I think I'm gonna go with some of this gorgeous jasper. Okay, so now I'm holding my wires up here. I'm pushing these beads down, and I'm looking down here to make sure that that is even on the top, and in fact it is. Now I'm going to get my tape measure, my ruler involved here, and I'm going to measure from the split, because that's the part that goes around our neck, right? And I'm going to go from there to see. That's going to let me know really the length that's going to go around my neck, right? So I'm going to start that gray bead. That gray bead is where the split begins, and that's the part that will go around the neck. And I'm just shy of 19, so I think I'm going to go just a few more beads. I'm going to go 3 more of each. I think I still have enough room for crimping here, because I want it just a little bit below 18, so maybe like around 19. This is for me. So I'm wanting it to lay a certain way. So there's, I think, 3 of each of those. Now, the other thing you want to be mindful when you're finishing off your necklaces, guys, it's split technique. Any necklace for that fact is your crimps, right? You don't want to finish with a bead that the hole is so big that your crimp will fall through. So I think I'm going to be okay because these are just little 4mm. My crimp is not going to fall through that hole, but I also had those seed beads. If I wanted to use those, I could. But I probably would not use the rondelles simply because that hole is just about a 2mm hole, which is the same side as my crimps. And we do not want that. Okay, so that's what I've got. And let me see. So that's 9.5. So that's 19. So it's going to be right around 20. Right around 20 with my, I'm putting one more bead on, with my toggle. Okay, now this is where you need a clip or a bead stopper. Okay, either or will work, doesn't matter, whatever you've got. I've said it many times, you know, bead stopper, I've even got little binder clips, whatever, right? Chip clip, anything you've got, okay? Just, that's what you need. You need one in order for us to finish this off. So I'm going to stabilize the one side. Did I put a bronze bead on? Let me just do one more check to make sure I am even. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to put that bead stopper. And what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to pull you down now, is this is how we finish it off. We're going to put that bead stopper right at the edge. We're not going to leave any play here on this side. We're going to pull that bead stopper all the way down to where it's touching that last bead. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and crimp it off. Now, notice here, this is where we're going to focus our attention. We want to make sure that that first gray bead, you see how I have a little movement right here? Okay, I'm going to push that down even a little bit more. See, I was able to push that down. Can you see that? To where you almost cannot even see my wire. Okay, and now that I push that down, look, because this one was tight a minute ago, look how I even have a smidge, even though it's a smidge, there's a smidge of wire there on this strand that has the bead stopper. So, there you go. So, well, don't do it, don't do that. Don't, you know, fling a bead off. So you do want to make sure that you are tight was what I was getting at. So I know it's upside down, but you know, we want to pull that down. We don't want any gaps in this section right here at the split. This is where we want it to be nice and tight, okay? And so I've got a crimp and I've got a wire guardian. And so I just fed my crimp down, let it fall down. And now I am going to put my wire guardian up the barrel on one channel. We'll do this twice. Down the horseshoe, down the other channel on the other side. Here comes my tail. And now I'm going to put that right through that crimp. And if my wire will fit through my first bead, I'll put it through. But even my 49 strand is not fitting through because these 4mm do not have very big holes, so that's okay. So now I'm going to grab my tail, okay, and hold my wire guardian, making sure to not cross my wires. And I'm going to pull my tail. You see how that's starting to come together? So I'm holding that wire guardian up on the top there. Now I'm going to squeeze my wire guardian and continue to pull that. Okay, and again, before I crimp this now, I am going to double check myself down here, and I'm only, again, worried about this strand, so I'm not worried about what's happening over here. I'm just looking, and I'm like, okay, so that's nice and tight. That's tight. There's no slack on the wire where it meets my loop here, and that's good to go. But you don't want to make it so tight that, you see, I almost just pulled it too tight, how they're just a little scrunched. Okay, you do want to have a little movement. So I'm going to back that out just a little bit. Just a little bit. I'm going to back that out and let that breathe a little bit there. But I don't want to have any wires showing through either, do I? So in a case like this, you know, what we normally do, that's how I always finish off my necklaces, is I always put them in some sort of a snake, right? So, and again, I'm only worried about this strand. So I'm flush down here at my gray bead. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just twist my wire around and notice how now my crimp came back up when I just gave it that slack, and it's really flush right there because it needed that. It needed that movement. It was a little bit too tight when I first pulled that tail down. Okay, so I'll pull you back down, and now we're just gonna crimp, and we'll use the magical crimper today. So let me make sure that my wires are not crossed, okay? And let's go ahead and grab our tool. And if you've never seen the magical crimper before, you're not familiar, there's just one divot in the magical crimper. You can use a regular crimper if you want to. We're just gonna put that right over the crimp tube. We're gonna give it a squeeze, and then we are going to turn it to the side and see how it makes it 4 corners. And then we'll turn it to the side, put it back in that divot, and then we're gonna keep squeezing. I'm gonna open now and close my tool as I turn the bead crimp tube around, and this is gonna turn the crimp tube into a crimp bead. And so it looks like part of the design. And because this is so fancy schmancy, I'm opting to do that instead of using a regular crimp and a crimp cover. But you can use regular crimp if you want. It's whatever you want. And now see, got a nice round bead. I'll go ahead and trim the excess. And flush cut that way close. And that's what I've got. Okay, now we're gonna go over here to this side and do the same thing. So you can do whatever you want to finish off with whatever size jump ring, guys. It's just really preference. So I think that we don't need anything major. I think I'll just use some 6mm here. These might be even a 5mm. And so I'm just gonna open up my jump rings, attach my clasp, and then I'll show you what we made. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Happy Saturday, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this technique and it inspires you to make something beautiful out of, you know, either your Berry Elegance bag or any beads that you have, even something holiday inspired. I'll also pull out my other 2 really quick to show you one more time, just to give you a couple of different ideas. Those other necklaces I showed you, those are actually in my store. If you head over to my store, you can actually see the listing. You can take a look at them there as well if you want. You can see how they lay on the mannequins on my store. Okay, guys, so there you go. So we're all set. So let's go ahead and see what we made. So this is the front of my herringbone. So I do want to double check myself and see my loop. It's still just off a smidge. So I'm gonna put my chain nose right there, and then my chain nose right here, and move that just a little bit because he just is not still laying. Yeah. Okay, so there we go. So my loops are now correct. So that's the front of my herringbone, right? And so this is where our split began, and there's our asymmetrical split necklace, my friends. Isn't that beautiful? I love it. I think it's absolutely stunning. One of my favorite things to do is these splits, and I really love the asymmetricalness of this. It is so beautiful. Look at how pretty that is. And, you know, just think when we lay it out, let me lay it out regular. Look at how cool that is. And this is, again, how it's going to lay. And I want you to notice, right, because it's so light. Do you notice how drapey it is, which it needs to be with that split? So, you know, this is kind of, you know, how it's going to lay, but it lays just perfect. There's no stiffness to it because we use that 49 strand. It's exactly why we did that. So that's just about how it's going to lay around the body about like that, and it's just gonna flow, and it's just so beautiful. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Happy Saturday. I will see you guys tomorrow when we make the finish making up the coordinating pieces, the bracelet and the earrings, to this gorgeous split necklace. So happy weekend, everybody, and until tomorrow, be blessed.